Commander Taman stood on the bridge of the human ship New Sol and watched the stars through the big front window. The ship was not the biggest or fastest in space, but it was strong, and his crew was good. They had been traveling for 3 months, looking for new worlds and new friends among the stars. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Taman liked this peaceful time when they were between star systems. It gave him time to think about their mission Earth had sent them far from home to explore and learn about other species in the galaxy. Some aliens were friendly, some were not, but all of them were interesting. Lieutenant Sujin sat at her control station, checking the ship sensors. Her fingers moved quickly over the buttons and screens. She was the best pilot Taman had ever worked with. She could fly the New Sol through anything: asteroid fields, storm clouds, even enemy fire if needed. But today the space around them was calm and empty. That changed when the distress signal appeared on their screens. The signal was weak and old, maybe days or weeks since someone sent it. Sujin looked at the readings and frowned. Most distress signals they found were from pirates trying to trick other ships, but this one was different. It had special codes that only certain species used. Dr. Haywon looked up from her science station. She was young but very smart about alien technology and languages. She studied the signal patterns for several minutes before speaking. The signal is from the Valari, she said. Her voice was excited. The Valari were once great explorers and teachers in the galaxy. Taman knew about the Valari from his academy training 50 years ago. They had been one of the most important species in space. They built beautiful crystal cities on dozens of worlds. Their ships were works of art that could travel faster than any other race. They had been the first to achieve faster than light travel long before humans even left Earth. But then the Great Plague came. The plague was a terrible sickness that only affected the Valari. It spread through all their worlds, killing millions every day. Their doctors and scientists tried everything, but nothing worked. The plague burned through their population like fire through dry grass. In just 5 years, billions of Valari died. The survivors scattered to small colonies far from their old worlds. They were afraid the plague might come back. They stopped building new ships and cities. They stopped exploring and teaching other species. They just tried to survive with what little they had left. Now there were maybe a few 100,000 Valari left in the whole galaxy. They lived on 3 small dying worlds. Their technology was breaking down. Their ships barely worked. Their voices in the Galactic Council grew weaker every year. The big species like the Zephyrians and Nexari and Vorthan had taken over everything the Valari once controlled. The Zephyrians controlled trade routes with their fast merchant ships. The crystal beings called Nexari took over mining operations on rich worlds. The gas creatures called Vorthan dominated all the science research. Everyone had forgotten about the Valera when Valari ships sent distress calls. Most other species ignored them. The Valari had nothing valuable to trade anymore. Their technology was old. Their worlds were poor. Helping them was considered a waste of time and resources by the major powers. But Taman remembered his history lessons. He remembered that the Valari had been teachers and explorers when humanity was still trapped on one small planet. They had shared knowledge freely with younger species. They had helped build the early Galactic Council. They had been friends to anyone who wanted to learn. They deserved better than being forgotten. Set course for the Valari distress beacon. Taman ordered his crew. The bridge crew looked at each other with some surprise. Most captains would have ignored the signal, but they trusted their commander. Lieutenant Sujin started calculating the jump coordinates without asking questions. Engineer Minho began preparing the engines for the course change. Communications officer Jiwoo tried to boost the signal to learn more about what was wrong. The journey took 2 days through hyperspace. When they dropped back into normal space, they found themselves near a small yellow star. The distress signal was coming from the 3rd planet. It was a cold world, covered in ice and storms, not the kind of place most species would choose to live. But there in orbit around the planet was a Valari research station. The station was old and clearly in trouble. Parts of its crystal structure were dark. Where power had failed, debris floated around it, showing where sections had broken off. The station was slowly falling toward the planet. As it got closer to the atmosphere, it would burn up and everyone inside would die. Dr. Haywon studied the station with her instruments. The design is beautiful, she said, with wonder. Even falling apart, it was more elegant than most human buildings. The Villari had always been artists as well as scientists. They made everything beautiful, even simple research stations. But there was something else her sensors detected. The station was not just dying, it was working on something important. Strange energy readings came from the central laboratory. Power flowed through systems that should not have been active on a failing station. Whatever the Villari were doing, it was big, Commander. Taman opened a communication channel to the station. This is the human exploration vessel New Soul responding to your distress call. Do you need assistance? For a long moment there was only static, then a voice answered, speaking in accented standard Galactic. The voice was old and tired, but surprised. Human ship, this is Research Director Kalaves. Why did you come? Everyone else passes by our call. Stamen thought about that question. Why had he come? The honest answer was simple. Because you called, he said into the microphone. That is enough. There was another pause. Then the Villari voice came back warmer than before. Thank you, human commander. We have 23 researchers aboard this station. Our orbit is decaying. We have perhaps 6 hours before we fall into the atmosphere. Our escape pods were damaged in an accident 3 days ago. We cannot leave, Lieutenant. Sujin was already checking their ship capacity. We can take them all, sir, she reported. The New Soul had room for extra passengers if needed, but Dr. Haywon was studying her readings more carefully. Commander, she said quietly, they are not just trying to survive. They are trying to finish something. The energy readings from their laboratory are unlike anything I have seen before. If they are working on what I think they are working on, it could change everything. Taemin looked at the failing research station. On his main screen inside were 24 alien scientists trying desperately to complete some great work before their time ran out. They were the last remnants of a once great civilization, forgotten by a galaxy that had moved on without them. Humanity remembered prepared docking procedures. He ordered, we are going to help them finish whatever they started. The New Soul moved slowly toward the research station. Its docking arms extended carefully toward the old crystal structure. As they got closer, Taemin could see Villari faces at the windows watching their approach. Their large golden eyes were full of hope and fear. They had been forgotten by everyone else, but not by the humans. The docking process took an hour. The Villari research station was old, and its docking ports did not match the human ship perfectly. Engineer Minho had to make quick changes to their docking tube so it would fit, but finally the New Soul connected with the station, and Commander Taemin could lead his team aboard. Inside of the station was both beautiful and sad. The walls were made of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. The corridors curved in graceful arcs that felt more like art than simple hallways, but many of the crystals were cracked, or dark emergency lights flickered where the main power had failed. The air recycling system coughed and wheezed as it struggled to keep working. Research Director Kalaves met them at the airlock. She was old even by Villari standards. Her blue scales had faded to pale gray. Her large golden eyes were tired from years of worry and disappointment, but when she saw the humans, her eyes brightened with something she had not felt in a long time. Hope, why did you really come? She asked Commander Taemin as they walked through the station corridors. The Zephyrians ignore our signals. The Nexari say we have nothing worth their time. The Vorthans study us like museum pieces, but never help. Why are humans different? Taemin looked around at the failing station, at the 23 Villari scientists who had gathered to meet them. These people had once been the greatest explorers in the galaxy. They had achieved faster than light travel when humans were still using chemical rockets. They had built wonders that still amazed other species 50 years later. They deserved respect, not abandonment. Because someone should have helped you long ago, he said simply. Because what happened to your people was terrible and unfair. Because you were teachers when we needed to learn. Kalaves led them to the central laboratory, and Taemin felt his breath catch in his throat. The room was huge, with a domed ceiling made of crystal that showed the stars outside, but in the center of the room was something that made his heart race with excitement. It was a machine unlike anything he had ever seen. The device stood 3 meters tall and was made of crystal and metal that seemed to flow together. Like liquid, the crystals pulsed with colors that had no names: purple that was deeper than space, blue that was brighter than lightning, gold that was warmer than sunlight. The machine hummed with power that made the air itself vibrate. Dr. Haywon stepped forward with her scientific instruments. She took readings, and her eyes grew wider and wider as she saw the results. "Commander," she whispered, "this is impossible. The energy patterns, the mathematical structures they have built a dimensional fold generator." Calaves nodded with quiet pride. "We call it the gateway," she said. "It bends space itself. One step through here, 10,000 light years. There no ships needed, no fuel consumed, no time lost. We have worked on this for decades." The implications hit Taemin like a physical blow. This was not just advanced technology, this was revolutionary. With dimensional fold travel, the galaxy would shrink to the size of a small town. Any world could be reached instantly. Trade, exploration, colonization. Everything would change. But the machine was not finished. The crystals flickered unsteadily, power cables sparked where connections were loose. Parts of the device were held together with emergency repairs. The Velari had the knowledge to build this miracle, but they lacked the resources to complete it properly. "What do you need to make it work?" Taemin asked. Calaves looked surprised by the question. She had grown used to disappointment, to promises broken and help withdrawn. "We need stable power generators," she said hesitantly. "Quantum processors, trilithium, containment fields, but these are expensive, and we have nothing left to trade then." "It is good we are not traders," Taemin said with a smile. "We are explorers, and explorers help each other." "Lieutenant." Sujin pulled Taemin aside. "Sir," she said quietly, "we need to contact Earth immediately. This technology could change human expansion into deep space. The colonial worlds, the mining operations, everything could be connected instantly. Earth command would want to know about this right away." But Taemin shook his head. He had seen what happened when powerful technology fell into the wrong hands. The major species would fight over it. They would use it to build empires and control trade routes. The Velari would be pushed aside again, forgotten once more, while others profited from their work. "The dimensional fold generator belongs to them," he said firmly. "We are here to help them finish it, not to steal it." Over the next few days, the human crew worked alongside the Velari scientists. It was amazing to watch the two species learn from each other. Engineer Minho solved power distribution problems that had troubled the Velari for months. His practical approach, combined with their theoretical knowledge, created solutions neither could have found alone. Communications Officer Jiwoo established quantum data links that improved the machine's processing speed by 300%. She worked with young Velari scientist Telkov, who taught her about crystal matrix programming while she showed him human-computer networking techniques. Dr. Haewon spent hours with Calaves going over the mathematical equations that made dimensional folding possible. The math was beautiful and elegant. Like poetry written in numbers, the Velari had discovered principles of space and time that human science was only beginning to understand. But it was not just knowledge they shared. The humans brought spare parts from their ship, modern power cells that could run for years without failing, quantum processors that were smaller but more powerful than anything the Velari had, containment fields that could hold dangerous energies safely. More importantly, they brought hope. The Velari scientists, who had worked in isolation for so long, suddenly had partners, people who believed in their work, who wanted to see them succeed, who treated them as equals, not as relics from the pastas. The dimensional fold generator began to stabilize. Calaves felt something she had not experienced in decades. Joy, the machine that had been her life work for 30 years, was finally coming together. The crystals glowed steadily now. The power flowed smoothly through new circuits. The containment fields held the dangerous energies in perfect balance. "We are almost ready for the first test," she told Taemin. Her voice trembled with excitement and fear. "If this works, it will prove that folding space is possible. If it fails, the explosion could destroy the station in both our ships." Taemin looked at the beautiful machine, at the hope in the Velari scientist's eyes, at his own crew, who had worked so hard to make this moment possible. The risk was enormous, but the potential reward was beyond imagination. "Then we had better make sure it works," he said. The test was scheduled for the next day, but as they made final preparations, none of them knew that their success had already been noticed. Someone else had detected the energy readings from their experiments. Someone who wanted the dimensional fold technology for themselves. Someone who would not ask politely or offer help in return. The major powers of the galaxy had finally remembered the Valerian. They were coming to take what they wanted. The research station buzzed with nervous energy as the test day arrived. 3 weeks of hard work had transformed the dimensional fold generator from a failing experiment into something beautiful and powerful. The crystals now glowed with steady, pure light that filled the laboratory with rainbow colors. The power systems hummed smoothly. The containment field sparkled like captured starlight. Commander Taman stood beside Research Director Kalavas at the primary control console. Both their hands rested on the activation switches. The moment they had all worked toward was finally here, but everyone knew the danger. A dimensional fold generator had never been tested before. If something went wrong, the explosion could tear a hole in space itself. All stations, report ready, Lieutenant. Sujin announced from the temporary control center. They had set up the new Sol had extended its protective shields around the research station. The human ship was ready to evacuate everyone. If the test went badly, Dr. Haywon monitored her instruments carefully. She had studied the theoretical math for weeks, but theory and reality were different things. The energy readings were beyond anything in human science textbooks. If the Valari calculations were correct, they were about to bend the laws of physics themselves. Engineer Minho watched the power systems like a hawk. Every circuit, every connection, every flow of energy had to be perfect. One mistake could cascade into disaster. He had triple-checked everything but still felt nervous sweat on his forehead. Communications Officer Jiwoo kept scanning space around them for any other ships. The energy they were about to release would be visible across several star systems. If anyone else was watching, they would know something important was happening. Are you ready, Taman? Asked Calabeth. Old Valari scientist looked at the machine that had been her life's work. Her golden eyes reflected the glow of the crystals. She thought about her people scattered across dying worlds, about the species that had forgotten them, about the humans who had chosen to help when no one else would. I have been ready for 30 years, she said. Together they pressed the activation switches. The dimensional fold generator came alive with a sound like crystal bells singing in harmony. Space around the device began to shimmer and bend like heat waves rising from hot ground. Reality twisted in ways that hurt to look at directly. The air itself seemed to stretch and fold back on itself. Then it happened. A doorway of pure energy opened in the middle of the laboratory. It was not large, just big enough for a person to step through, but on the other side, impossibly, was a view of space 10,000 light years away. Stars that should have been invisible dots blazed like nearby suns. Nebulae glowed with colors so bright they seemed touchable. A distant galaxy filled half the view. Dr. Haywon was recording everything, her hands shaking with excitement. The energy requirements are minimal once the fold is established, she said in amazement. The field remains stable. The connection is perfect. This is not just faster than light travel. This is instantaneous transport across the galaxy. They sent a test probe through the dimensional doorway. The small robot transmitted back, perfectly confirming what their eyes could hardly believe. They had folded space itself. They had created a bridge across impossible distances. They had achieved what no species in galactic history had ever accomplished. The Valari scientists cheered with voices that echoed through the crystal halls. Some wept with joy, others danced in the low gravity. Young Taukov hugged Engineer Minho while they both laughed like children. Kalaves stared at the dimensional doorway with tears flowing down her scaled cheeks. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. But their celebration was interrupted by warning lights flashing on the human ship's sensors. Lieutenant Sujin's voice came over the communication system, urgent and worried. Commander, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. 3 large ships approaching fast. On the main screen appeared a sight that made Taman's heart sink. A Zephyr battlecruiser, sleek and deadly with weapons that could destroy a planet. The insectoid Zephyrs controlled most of the galaxy's trade routes through force and intimidation. Behind it came a Nexari crystal ship, beautiful but cold, like a work of art made from living diamond. The Nexari were miners and hoarders who locked away technology in their crystal vaults. The third ship was harder to see because it was made of living gas held together by energy fields. The Vorthen were scientists, but they studied other species like laboratory specimens, never sharing what they learned. Captain Vex 7 of the Zephyr battlecruiser appeared on their communication screen. His compound eyes glittered with greed. His mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Unknown human vessel, he said in a voice like grinding metal, you are in violation of salvage rights. The Villari Research Station and all its contents are now property of the Zephyrian Trade Consortium. Prepare to be boarded behind him, Taemin could. See Nexari crystal beings that look like living gems, their leader spoke in harmonics that translated as, the dimensional technology will be studied in our secured facilities for the benefit of galactic science. No species may possess such dangerous power alone. The Vorthan representative was a swirling cloud of gas that formed temporary shapes as it spoke. The Villari specimens and their research data will be relocated to our research habitat for a proper examination. We have waited long enough to study. The survivors of the great Plaga Kalaves heard every word, her golden eyes filled with rage and despair. After decades of being ignored, the major powers had finally noticed the Villari, but only because they had something worth stealing. They wanted to take the dimensional fold technology and lock it away. They wanted to study the Villari like animals in a zoo. They wanted to finish what the plague had started. Commander Taemin looked at the three powerful ships surrounding them. The new Soul was an exploration vessel, not a warship. Against a Zephyrian battlecruiser, they were completely outgunned, but he had not come this far just to watch the Villari be crushed again. Negative. He replied to Captain Vex 7, this is a humanitarian rescue mission. The Villari Research Station and its contents belong to the Villari people. We will not surrender them to anyone. The Zephyrian captain's mandibles clicked with amusement. Human, you have one small ship against three battlecruisers. Stand down immediately, or we will take what we want by force. Taemin looked around the bridge at his crew lieutenant. Sujin sat ready at the pilot controls, her face determined. Engineer Minho was already rerouting power to weapons and shields. Doctor? Hey, one clutched her datapad with the dimensional fold research. Communications officer Jiwoo waited for orders. All of them knew they might die in the next few minutes, but none of them looked afraid. All hands to battle stations, Taemin ordered. Prepare for defensive action. The major powers had forgotten the Villari for 50 years. They had ignored their calls for help and left them to die in isolation, but now that the Villari had achieved something magnificent, they wanted to steal it and claim credit. Tae-Min would not let that happen. The new Soul might be small and outgunned, but it had something the enemy ships lacked. It had a crew that believed in doing what was right even when it was dangerous. It had humans who would fight for friends they had just made. It had the stubborn refusal to abandon those who needed help. The battle was about to begin, and the Villari would not face it alone. The first enemy shots lit up space like deadly fireworks. The Zephyrian battlecruiser fired plasma cannons that could melt through asteroid belts. Each blast was bright enough to blind anyone looking directly at it. The shots missed the new Soul by only a few hundred meters, close enough that the heat made the hull plates glow red. Lieutenant Sujin threw the human ship into a spinning dive that would have made most pilots sick. She had trained for combat flying, but never against ships this powerful. The new Soul was fast and agile, but the enemy vessels had weapons that could destroy them with a single direct hit. Return fire, Taemin ordered. The human ship's weapons were designed for exploration, not war. They had mining lasers for cutting through rock and defensive shields for protection against space debris, but engineer Minho had worked for 3 days modifying everything he could. The mining lasers now focused into tight beams that could cut through metal. The shields had been boosted to maximum power. Their shots sparked off the Zephyrian battlecruiser's heavy armor, but did little real damage. It was like throwing rocks at a mountain. The enemy ship was simply too big and too well protected, but Taemin had not expected to win through firepower alone. Use the research station as cover, he ordered. Sujin, take us close to the planet. The new Soul dove toward the icy world below, using the failing Villari research station to block enemy shots. The larger Zephyrian ship had trouble following them into the planet's atmosphere. Its heavy armor made it slow to maneuver. The crystalline Nexari vessel was beautiful but fragile and stayed far from the dangerous gravity. Well, the Vorthan gas ship was different. It flowed like living smoke, changing shape to avoid obstacles, but it was also cautious. Its weapons were energy drains that could shut down systems from a distance, not the kind of thing that worked well in a chaotic battle. We cannot run forever, Dr. Haewon said as another enemy blast shook the ship. We need a plan. Min was already working on one. The research station was falling toward the planet as its orbit decayed. The dimensional fold generator was still active, creating energy readings that might confuse enemy sensors. If they could use the station's position and the planet's gravity well, they might have a chance. On the research station, Calaves watched the battle through the crystal windows. Her heart ached as she saw the small human ship fighting impossible odds to protect her people. The humans could have fled. They could have saved themselves and left the Volari to their fate. Instead, they chose to fight three powerful enemies to defend strangers they had just met. She made a decision that would change everything. Commander Taemin, she called over the communication link. I can overload the dimensional fold generator. Create a massive space fold that will damage their ships, but it will destroy the research station and everyone aboard. No, Taemin replied immediately. Get your people to the escape pods. We will not sacrifice you to win this fight. But Calaves had already begun the overload sequence. The dimensional fold generator screamed as power flooded through its systems far beyond safe limits. The beautiful crystals began to crack and shatter. Space around the research station started to twist violently. The escape pods launched desperately toward the new Sol, small crystal vessels carrying 23 Volari scientists toward safety, but the research station was tearing itself apart and some of the pods were caught in the gravitational Sujin. We need to catch those escape pods, Taemin ordered, while dodging enemy fire while protecting the research station while fighting three battle cruisers at once. Lieutenant Sujin somehow managed to position the new Sol to catch the fleeing Volari escape pods. The ship's docking bays opened to swallow the small crystal vessels one by one, but they could not save them all. Two escape pods tumbled toward the planet, caught in gravitational waves from the overloading dimensional generator. Young Telkov was in one of them, the Volari scientist who had worked so closely with communications Officer Jiwoo. His pod spun out of control, its crystal hull cracking from the stress. Jiwoo did not hesitate. She launched herself out of the new Sol in a rescue suit, flying through space on nothing but compressed air, and hoped she caught Telkov's pod just before it fell too deep into the planet's gravity. Well, her rescue tether strained as the new Sol pulled them both to safety. The second pod was not so lucky. It contained three elderly Volari researchers who had given their lives to science. They had volunteered to stay behind to help with the dimensional generator overload. Their pod broke apart in the chaotic space near the research station. The three scientists died as heroes, knowing their sacrifice might save their people. The dimensional fold generator finally exploded. Space itself screamed as reality tore apart. The research station vanished in a cascade of rainbow energy that spread outward like ripples on a pond. The explosion created gravitational waves that caught the Zephyrian battlecruiser completely off guard. The enemy ship tumbled out of control, its hull plates buckling under dimensional stress. Captain Vex 7 screamed orders that nobody could follow as his ship spun helplessly. The crystalline Nexari vessel retreated quickly, its leaders deciding that damaged crystal was worse than losing potential profit. The Vorthan gas ship simply flowed away from the chaos like smoke and wind. Its energy form let it escape damage, but also meant it could not help its allies. For a moment the battle paused as everyone stared at the place where the research station had been. 50 years of Volari research had vanished in seconds. The dimensional fold technology that could have revolutionized galactic travel was gone forever. Scattered as broken equations across empty space, or so everyone thought. In the medical bay of the new Sol, Calaves lay recovering from radiation exposure. Her scales had turned gray and Dr. Sujin worked frantically to treat her injuries. The old Volari scientist looked more dead than alive. The data, she whispered, all the research, the calculations, the breakthrough, it's gone. But Commander Taemin sat beside her bed with something small and precious in his hand, a data crystal that gleamed like captured starlight. Doctor, hey, one had managed to download the complete research files before the station exploded. Every equation, every test result, every breakthrough that had taken decades to achieve not gone, he said gently. It's all Heracalaves stared at the crystal in amazement. The humans had saved more than just her life. They had saved her people's future. They had preserved the work that could lift the Volari from poverty and isolation back to their rightful place among the stars. What Will you do with it? She asked, afraid of the answer. The dimensional fold technology was worth more than entire star systems. With it, humanity could dominate galactic trade, establish an empire spanning thousands of worlds, become the greatest power. In known space, Taemin could sell the data to Earth and become rich beyond imagination. Instead, he pressed the crystal into Kalavest's trembling hands. It's yours, he said simply. It always was. We just helped you finish it. The Zephyrian battlecruiser was finally getting back under control. Captain Vex 7 appeared on their communication screen again. His compound eyes burned with rage, his mandibles dripped with venom. This is not overhuman, he snarled. We will hunt you across the galaxy, we will take what belongs to you. Estemin looked at the enemy captain with calm eyes. You had 50 years to help them. He said you ignored them. When they called for aid, you left them to die alone. Now they have friends and you have nothing. The three enemy ships retreated, still damaged from the dimensional explosion. But everyone knew they would be back. They would bring reinforcements. They would not give up easily. The Lari were no longer alone in the galaxy. They had found friends worth fighting. HFY. 6 months later, the new Soul arrived at Earth orbit, battered and scarred from their long journey home. The ship had traveled through hostile space, dodging Zephyrian patrol fleets and Nexari mining operations. The major powers had put bounties on their heads, calling them pirates and terrorists for protecting Velari research, but they had made it home safely. The 20 Velari survivors were housed in comfortable quarters aboard the human ship. They had never seen Earth before and pressed against the windows in wonder as the blue and green world grew larger. The planet was so alive, so full of water and growing things. It was nothing like their cold, dying colony world. Skalaves had recovered from her radiation injuries, though her scales would never return to their original blue color. The gray patches marked her as a survivor, someone who had faced death and lived to tell about it. She carried the data crystal containing the dimensional fold research in a small pouch close to her heart. Earth Command wanted to meet with them immediately. The human military leaders had heard reports of the new technology and the battle with three major powers. Admiral Park wanted to study the dimensional fold data to build weapons that could protect human colonies. Admiral Kim thought they should sell the technology to the highest bidder to fund more exploration ships, but Commander Taemin had other ideas. The meeting took place in a conference room high above the city of Seoul. Earth Kalaves sat beside Taemin, facing a table full of human admirals and scientists and politicians. She felt small and old, surrounded by so much power and authority. These humans could decide the fate of her entire species with a single vote. Admiral Park spoke first. Commander Taemin, your report mentions technology that could revolutionize space travel. We need to examine this data immediately for Earth security. The dimensional fold generator could give humanity a massive advantage in space. Admiral Kim added, we could connect all our colonies instantly, establish trade routes that bypass alien controlled systems, become the dominant power in this region of the galaxy. Dr. Chun, the head of Earth Science Division, leaned forward eagerly. The theoretical implications are staggering. If we could study how dimensional folding works, we might discover principles of physics that could lead to time travel or parallel universe. The research possibilities are endless. All of them spoke as if the Velari were not in the room, as if the technology belonged to Earth just because a human ship had rescued its creators. Kalaves felt her heart sinking as she listened to their grand plans. None of them mentioned helping her people rebuild their civilization. None of them cared about the species that had created this miracle. Then Taemin stood up with respect. Sirs, he said quietly, the dimensional fold technology does not belong to Earth. It belongs to the Velari people who spent 50 years developing it. We were privileged to help them complete their research, but we have no right to claim it as our own. Admiral Park frowned. Commander, you seem to forget that Earth funded this expedition. The ship, the crew, the supplies all came from human resources. We have every right to expect a return on our investment, but the Velari have nothing left to give. Taemin replied. Their worlds are dying. Their population is scattered. Their technology is failing. They need this breakthrough to survive as a species. Admiral Kim leaned back in his chair. Commander, I understand your sympathy for these aliens, but we must think about humanity first. This technology could secure our future in space, ensure that human colonies never fall to alien aggression. Kalaves listened to the debate with growing sadness. She had hoped that humans were different from the other major powers, but now she saw the same greed, the same desire to take what others had created, the same willingness to justify theft by calling it necessity. Dr. Jun tried a different approach. Perhaps we could reach a compromise, he suggested. We help the Velari rebuild one of their worlds in exchange for shared access to the dimensional fold technology. Everyone benefits and nobody loses. That sounds reasonable, Admiral Park said, but of course Earth would need to control the technology to ensure it is not misused by other species. We have the resources and stability to manage such dangerous research. Calaves felt tears flowing down her gray scales. Once again, her people would be dependent on others. Once again, they would be junior partners in their own discovery. Once again, they would watch others profit from Velari knowledge while the survivors lived on charity. But Taemin was not finished, sirs. He said with quiet firmness, I must respectfully disagree. The Velari will control their own technology. We will help them rebuild their civilization as equals, not as dependents. If Earth wants access to dimensional fold travel, we can ask politely and hope they say yes. The room fell silent. Admiral Park's red face showed his anger. Commander, you are suggesting we give up a strategic advantage that could change the balance of power in the galaxy? Yes, Sir. Taemin replied calmly. That is exactly what I am suggesting. Why? Admiral Kim demanded. Why would you put alien interests ahead of human security? Because, Taemin said, looking directly at Kalavas, because 50 years ago the major powers abandoned the Velari when they needed help most. Because for decades nobody answered their distress calls or cared if they lived or died, because they deserve better than being forgotten again. He turned back to the admirals. Because if we steal their technology, we become no different from the Zephyrians or Nexari or Vorthan. We become the kind of species that takes from the weak instead of helping them. We become everything we claim to stand against. Calaves stared at the human commander in amazement. In a room full of powerful people who wanted to exploit her people's discovery, one man stood up to defend what was right. One person chose honor over profit, friendship over advantage. The debate continued for hours. Admiral Park threatened to court-martial Taemin for insubordination. Admiral Kim warned that other species would develop dimensional fold technology and use it against humanity. Dr. Chun argued that scientific knowledge belonged to all sentient beings, but in the end it was President Lee who made the final decision. The leader of Earth government was an elderly woman who had lived through first contact with alien species. She had seen what happened when fear and greed guided human policy. The Velari will retain full control of their dimensional fold technology. She announced Earth will offer assistance in rebuilding their civilization, but only as partners, not as owners. We will ask for nothing in return except the friendship we should have offered 50 years ago. Admiral Park slammed his hand on the table. Madame President, you're making a terrible mistake, perhaps. President Lee replied, but it is the right mistake to make. After the meeting, Calaves walked with Taemin through the gardens outside. Earth Command. The air smelled of growing flowers and fresh rain. After the recycled atmosphere of spaceships and research stations, it was like breathing life itself. Why? She asked. Why did you risk your career to defend U.S. Taemin looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. Because someone had to, he said. Because you called for help, and we answered. Because friends do not abandon friends, no matter what the cost. For the first time in 50 years, Calaves felt hope burning bright in her chest. The Velari were no longer alone in the galaxy. They had found something more precious than any technology. They had found friends who would never forget them. 2 years later, the first Velari dimensional fold gateway opened above New Sol, the newest human colony world. The structure was breathtaking to see. A crystal ring 3 kilometers across that floated in space like a work of art made from captured starlight. The surface was covered with equations written in both Velari mathematical symbols and human numbers, showing how the two species had worked together. Research Director Calaves, now bearing the title Director General of Dimensional Sciences, stood beside Commander Taemin on the observation deck of the rebuilt research station. Her scales had regained some of their blue color and her golden eyes sparkled with pride and joy. The years of working with humans had restored more than just her health. They had restored her faith in the future. Today we activate the first permanent gateway, she announced to the mixed crowd of human and Velari engineers, scientists, and officials. This is not just a triumph of technology, it is proof that Species working together can achieve miracles. The gateway activation was watched by billions across dozens of worlds. The dimensional full generator had been rebuilt using the best of both human engineering and Valari theoretical knowledge. The result was more stable, more powerful, and safer than anything either species could have created. Alone Lieutenant Su Jin, now promoted to captain, commanded the test ship that would make the first transit. She had volunteered for the dangerous honor of being the first person to travel 10,000 light-years in a single step. Her crew included both humans and Valari working side by side at every station. Gateway control. This is test ship Harmony. Requesting permission for dimensional transit. Permission granted, Captain Sujin. The gateway is stable and ready. The crystal ring began to glow with rainbow colors that painted the nearby ships in shifting patterns of light. Space inside the ring twisted and folded, reality bending like heated metal. Then, suddenly, the impossible happened. A window opened, showing another star system so far away that light would take 10,000 years to cross the distance. The Harmony flew through the dimensional doorway and vanished for 30 seconds. There was silence. Then Captain Sujin's voice came through the communication system, clear and excited. Transit successful. We are now in the Yonder system. All ship systems normal. The gateway technology works perfectly. Cheers erupted across both worlds. Humans and Valari embraced each other, laughing and crying with joy. They had done something that would change the galaxy forever. They had built a bridge across impossible distances. They had proven that cooperation was stronger than competition. Over the following months, more gateways opened, connecting human colonies with Valari settlements. Trade flowed freely between the species. Human food and manufactured goods helped feed the struggling Valari populations, while Valari art and scientific knowledge enriched human culture. Both peoples prospered in ways neither could have achieved alone, but the greatest change was in how other species viewed them. The Alterenberg people had been neutral in galactic politics for centuries. They watched from their sky cities as the major powers fought over territory and resources, but when the Dimensional Gateway Network offered them free passage to explore distant stars, they gladly joined the growing alliance. The rock creatures called Lithans had been enslaved by the Nexari for generations, forced to mine crystals in dangerous conditions. But the Gateway Network let them escape to worlds where they could build their own stone cities. Human and Valari ships protected the refugee convoys while the Nexari raged helplessly. Even some of the major species began to change. The younger generation of Zephyrians grew tired of their leaders' endless wars and greedy exploitation. When the Gateway Network offered them honest trade and peaceful cooperation, many chose to defect to the growing alliance. The Vorthan Scientific Council split into factions. Some wanted to study the new alliance like laboratory specimens. Others recognized that true knowledge came from cooperation, not domination. A group of Vorthan researchers asked permission to join the Dimensional Gateway Project, offering their expertise in energy manipulation, but it was the small species, the forgotten ones, who benefited most. The crystal beings from Praxis 7 who had been ignored because their technology was primitive, the plant people of the verdant worlds who were dismissed because they moved too slowly, the aquatic depths dwellers who were avoided because they needed water to survive. All of them found welcome in the new alliance. All of them contributed something valuable. All of them proved that size and power were less important than wisdom and friendship. Captain Vex 7 of the Zephyrian Trade Consortium tried one last time to claim the dimensional technology by force. His battle fleet attacked a gateway construction site, expecting easy victory against the smaller alliance ships. But he found himself facing not just human and Valari vessels, but ships from dozens of species, all united in defense of their shared dream. The battle was over quickly. The Alliance fleet used dimensional fold tactics that let them appear anywhere instantly. The Zephyrian ships found themselves surrounded, outnumbered, and outmaneuvered. Captain Vex 7 retreated in defeat, his compound eyes burning with frustrated rage. In the great assembly hall of New Velar Prime, rebuilt with human engineering and Valari artistry, representatives from 47 species gathered to sign the Dimensional Transit Treaty. The document established rules for the Gateway Network that would govern galactic travel for generations to come. No species would be excluded from the network. regardless of size or power. No technology would be hoarded or used to control others. No people would be forgotten or abandoned. When they called for help, Director General Kalov signed the treaty with a crystal stylus that had been carved from the remains of the original research station. The tool gleamed with inner light, a reminder of the sacrifice that had made this moment possible. She thought of the 3 researchers who had died in the battle, the heroes who had given their lives so others could be free. Commander Taemin, now Admiral Taemin, added his signature with a simple metal pen. He thought of the distress call that had started everything. Such a small thing, eh?